Thank you all for coming. My name is Mitch Bry. I'm with RePower Madison. We organized this event tonight to help inform everyone about what's going on in our community with our energy future, a little more specifically with Madison Gas Electric. So a little bit about myself, and then I'll get on with the program. I've been working on energy efficiency and political advocacy and community nonprofits in Madison for the last 10 years. I think that our energy future is really important because right now we're wasting a lot of resources. We're operating in a way as a society that's not sustainable. We're, harvesting and mining resources, and then we're essentially throwing them away or wasting them. We get some really great things out of them, but we need to operate a lot more in line with nature so that our byproducts and waste products are actually reused and recycled. Tonight I'm going to talk for a few minutes, and then we're going to have Peter Taglia talk about the cold truth. Just click the bottom button there. There we go. If we want a little bit of light, we can click the button one up from that. Peter Taglia is a professional geologist and consultant in numerous aspects of energy and the environment, with an emphasis on electrical generation, transportation fuels, and bioenergy analysis. He's done extensive work with Wisconsin's Task Force on Global Warming, the Midwestern Governors Association, and the Wisconsin Legislative Council. And he began his career conducting contamination investigations, remediation, and environmental permitting at energy facilities. And he currently does research, analysis, and education. He's also worked for Clean Wisconsin and RMT, an environmental engineering firm. Peter holds a BA in environmental geology from the University of Montana and a master's in hydrogeology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So Peter will be on in just a few minutes. I want to provide some background information before Peter comes on to talk about what is happening right now in the community and why we have such an opportunity for change. The question is kind of what started this. And MGE's recently made some changes to their bills. They increased their fixed fees. So everyone has a fixed fee component on their bill and also a usage-based charge on their bill. MGE increased that that fixed fee and slightly decreased the usage-based fee. So you can see on the table that it went from $10 to $19 a month for residential electric customers. And that energy rate went down slightly. What this does in effect is it means that low energy users pay more while high energy users actually see a discount on their bill. That's how it came to be known as the billing scheme. It's really not a fair system. You can see on the right hand side there that if you're a customer using 250 kilowatt hours of electricity per month, your bill went up about 10%. If you're using 1,000 kilowatt hours a month, you actually got a decrease of 4%. There's a graph that goes along with this showing that there we go. MGE actually has among the highest fixed fees in the Midwest. This chart actually is a little outdated. That giant tallest one right there is a proposal from WPS, which was not approved. They actually got a lower fixed fee than they requested. So MGE actually is now the highest fixed fee in the Midwest. The Wall Street Journal even took note of this, calling MGE's proposal one of the most radical in the country. MGE, to their credit, did withdraw part of their proposal that would have brought fixed fees all the way up to about $69 a month in 2017. But they went forward with the bulk of their proposal, raising fixed fees from $10 to $19 a month on electric customers. And they also raised the fixed fees on natural gas customers about another $10 a month. So you're getting hit with both those fixed fee increases. And we don't know yet what will replace MGE's proposal for 2016 and 2017. they've withdrawn that part, but we'll have an opportunity to weigh in, and hopefully we can get those fixed fees to go down. So why do we care, right? Fixed fee, utility billing scheme. I mean, come on. But it's really important. These price signals affect how people use energy. If it's super duper cheap to run a hot tub and run the air conditioner and run your furnace at the same time, then who cares? But people respond to signals. If they didn't, there wouldn't be a thing such as economics. I mean, people study this, it's real, and the billing scheme hurts low energy users, hurts seniors, hurts people on fixed income, hurts students, people living in apartments, and it's bad for business. There are a lot of businesses that are developing in this sector, and they depend on the economics. With these changes, the payback period for an investment in clean energy decreased. So now it takes longer to pay for your solar panels. Or if you were expecting to save a certain amount of money by adding insulation to your house, you're now not going to save as much. And that's a really odd thing, but MG&E essentially is taking those savings from you. So there's less incentive to conserve, there's less incentive to upgrade your house, less reason to buy an LED light bulb. It also removes control from customers' bill. So if you lose your job and all of a sudden you need to cut back and try to save some money, the higher fixed fees mean that you can't eliminate that part of your bill. So even if you cut back on usage, you're still hit with the higher upfront fixed fee every month. Right around the same time, we got news that MG&E was also opposing the City of Madison's grant application to the Department of Energy. The city wanted to do some things to increase the amount of solar here in Madison. They would have got a fair amount of money from the DOE had this grant been approved, but MG&E didn't sign on in support, which pretty much killed it right there.
Why would that matter? Why do they care what MG&E thinks about DOE?
The DOE considers the utility as a crucial partner in this Sunshot program, and so other communities had the support of their utility. Madison did not.
You should know that MG&E also contacted the state who had written a letter of support and asked them to rescind that letter of support, and they did.
Wow.
So I appreciate all that. It might be worse than my slides. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask that everyone try to hold their comments until the end, and we will have a conversation at that point. So I want the input, but we're going to try to get through these presentations in a timely fashion. So what is RePower Madison? Well, we're a citizen group that formed about a year ago in response to MG&E's proposal for a higher fixed fee. We're interested in fighting for social, economic, and environmental justice, and getting community participation. So that means you can help out. If you are interested in volunteering, talk to me or someone else afterwards. Find one of those sign-in sheets, make sure you filled that out. There's a checkbox for volunteering. And we've heard some good stories already tonight, so if you have stories about how your bill went up, make sure you note that somewhere on a sign-up sheet, or contact us so that we can help you share your story. So what are our goals? Well, initially we wanted MG&E to drop their billing scheme. They didn't, so now we want them to reverse it. We think that's very doable. We also have a goal to increase public participation in these conversations and public awareness of energy issues, which are quite complex and not easy to boil down. And we want to make Madison a national leader in clean energy that's served by a utility of the future. A little more on that term in a few minutes. So, MG&E put their proposal forward. There was a lot of pushback. Just a few photos here. This is not the only type of pushback they had. But there were protests. Groups such as AARP got involved, NAACP got involved, numerous others The city of Madison actually formally participated in the docket on this and formally fought these charges, which is pretty odd for a city to do. I shouldn't say odd, but pretty unusual, and a really good bold step from city leadership. So a little more. And so at the end of all this, MG&E heard us loud and clear, but they didn't listen. They went ahead with their increase to those mandatory fees. Eventually, however, they started to realize they couldn't continue like this. They have a relationship with their customers. Although they're a monopoly, they still want this positive image. They've done a lot to build their reputation, and they saw it all go down the toilet real quickly. So in October, actually right before the public hearing on the billing scheme, they sent a letter to all their customers saying, hey, we heard you, we're going to give you a chance to weigh in. Just don't worry about it. Give us a few months in October. They're also in conversations with a group of technical experts, and they're exploring different rate structures and different utility business models. And then there's also a group of shareholder advocates who had filed proxy resolutions, and MG&E and those shareholders are now in discussion about doing a study to increase renewable energy here. So community energy conversations, that's what MG&E is calling their process where they're going to gather feedback from the community. You may have heard of this, you may not have. It is coming. We've been waiting since October, but our understanding is that at the end of the month, a series of small group meetings will be starting. And then sometime in the fall, there'll be like a town hall meeting and some other steps along the way. The most important thing is to show up at one of these meetings. Now, you may not have received an invitation yet. So RePower Madison has set up a website so that you can sign up and request an invitation from MG&E. So on our website, you can do that because it turns out they're not necessarily inviting everyone. They're selecting a random group of customers, and those customers get to participate, and the rest don't really know what's happening. So remember, on our website, you can sign up. We'll make sure MG&E knows you're interested in giving input, and hopefully they'll invite you.
Did they send their invitations out to the customers already?
I'm not, I didn't receive one. I believe they have. I've gotten an email because I am pretty involved, so I have been invited to a meeting.
Brad, I think those are the emails. I think that's whether maybe they need doing a formal one. I don't know, but
they sent out an email with a report
so far. So the best way to ensure that you get an invitation is to go on our website and click on Community Conversations, fill out your information, and hit submit. We'll pass that on. You can also contact MG&E directly. But they don't make it as easy or clear.
They have a sign up form.
Good. That's good. They did put a 30-page discussion guide on their website. If you click on Community Conversations, you can read what it's like to be the CEO of MG&E and some other stuff. So this is the website. So once you're there, you know you're at the right spot. Fill out your stuff. There's some other fields as well. So utility of the future. MG&E's said they want to become the utility of the future. We think that's great. We want a utility of the future. But what does that mean? It's not real clear. It's not really defined yet. But it's actually a term that's coming up in a number of states. And the utility industry is really in a transition. They are facing more competition from solar, wind, other resources, and electricity growth is slowing. So they face some challenges that they need to figure out. How exactly to figure that out is the question. It's still an open question, and you can weigh in on that. So So I sort of just covered a little bit of this already, but I wanted to give one example of a potential utility of the future. Green Mountain Power is a utility in Vermont that's taking seriously the need to go transition to renewable clean energy. So I've got their mission statement up there. It's may only be a mission statement, but that guides all of their activities. So we think that's really important. And they also just became the first utility to become a benefit corporation. That's also known as a B Corp. And it's sort of an interesting change in their corporate structure and their articles of incorporation, so that they'll consider more than just shareholder value in their decision making. It'll give them legal ability to consider other interests, other stakeholder interests, the community, the environment. So that's one possibility that would be really good for the Madison community if MG&E was considering more than just shareholder value and profit.
Didn't they end up having to close down a nuclear facility?
I'm not sure of that.
Yeah, the Yankee plant in Vermont?
I don't know. So I'm getting towards wrapping up. There are a number of ways you can stay involved, find out more. Make sure you grab a copy of each of those sheets that are on the back table, and that you get your name on a sign-up sheet. The most important thing you can do is participate in a community energy conversation. So do that. The easiest way to sign up for that is on our website. So that's repowermadison.org. We're also very active on Facebook. So find us on Facebook, RePower Madison, like our page, follow us, share, all that stuff. You can contact me if you want to volunteer, it's right there. And we've got some other events that are coming up to get a little more in detail with some of this stuff. So there's an event each of the next 3 weeks. If one of these interests you, please attend it. They're going to be smaller than this event tonight. These will be meetings. It'll be downstairs in room 104. And if you're in a nonprofit or a community organization or a neighborhood association, next Wednesday, come to that. If you're interested in volunteering, the week after is a good time to show up. And if you're involved in a business, that last event would be for you. And each of those are on Facebook. That's the best way to RSVP. We've also got information on our website. All right, thank you guys very much. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Peter.
We're going to go through a little bit of an overview, and I'm going to try to make it as fun as I can. I love energy and numbers, and I've lived in Madison for a long time and been a MG&E customer for a long time. So I'm going to go through a little bit of how the Cold Truth report that you have came about, and then I'm going to go through and have a little fun with the idea of pretending I'm the CEO. So if you haven't gotten it, you can get it at the front page or at the front table. It's a 4-pager. You can get it online, and it was really fun for me putting it together. It was kind of sad too. But the reason I put it together is because I found this nice pithy quote that talks about the reason self-awareness is the first step to improvement. And what had been bothering me since I had worked and lived in Madison, since going to grad school here in the late 90s, was that everyone had this perception that Madison Gas Electric, we're getting pretty good, we're getting green power, things are going pretty well. You see their advertising. And when I started to dig in, even at an early, many years ago, I realized that the perception was different from what the reality is. So that's it took many steps, but eventually it ended up with the Cold Truth. And what I'm going to do is share with you how that evolution came about, and a lot of the decisions that were made, and how there are a pattern of bad forecasts. And then hopefully we can have a cool discussion about maybe how we go forward with something as daunting as this. So most people don't realize this. There's a coal plant, with smokestacks over here. That Blount Street plant's 100 years old, and since I've lived in Madison, it's never been a baseload power plant. It's been kind of a peaker, a power plant that runs intermittently because it's so old and so inefficient that it just won't even be called upon by the grid, the people who operate the grid, except in the most hot days. So, but where most of MG&E's power comes from are 2 coal plants, and you guys might have seen them. One called Columbia is over by Portage. So if you head north from Madison, you'll see it, and it's a big power plant. It's co-owned by MG&E, Alliant Energy, and WPS. And we'll go into it a little bit more, but it's an old clunker that should have died a while ago, but it isn't. The other one is Elm Road, and if anyone here is a fan of brand new coal power plants and wants to like check out, you know, and kick the tires on one, that would be the plant for you because it is brand new. Just came online in 2010, although by online it's having horrendous reliability problems. And that's 94 miles from Madison. That's co-owned with We Energies and WPPI. And so you get this idea of kind of this out of sight, out of mind. For a lot of people, when we showed them this little map, they were like, I never knew that. Well, MG&E doesn't do a really good job of advertising the fact that those are where we get most of our power. So if you did want to find out where we get most of our power, you would go to MG&E's website, and this is part of their website, and you would say, you know, where MG&E's electricity comes from. And you'd see coal, 47.78%. And I looked at MG&E's Community Conversations website, and they use that number again. And that is a true number. They got 47.78% of their electricity last year from coal plants that they own, those 2 coal plants. And then you see this big block that says purchase power, and then you see a nice sized green renewable block, not nearly big enough. And you think, well, it's not that much of a coal problem. But when I saw those numbers, I was like, wait a second, that's not telling the whole story. So how do you find the whole story? If you guys are really excited and have a lot of time, you go to the Public Service Commission's website. And we got some veterans of the Public Service Commission. That is the regulatory agency that regulates utilities in Wisconsin. It was one of the first in the country. And the reason why it regulates utilities is because they're natural monopolies. And you have to have someone looking out for the public interest. We could argue about specific cases, how good of a job they've done. But nevertheless, they're advocating, they're looking out for the public interest, and the utilities have to publish everything in these things called, these legal proceedings called dockets, and you get this really rich amount of information there. And people like me actually go onto this website and dig in, and there's lots of data there. Lots and lots of data. This is just a screenshot of one docket. And they have different dockets every time they put a new turbine in a power plant or they retrofit something, there's a new docket. And you know, I could have zoomed out and you have all of these different parts of the docket. You know, so it says, here's our applicant's response to a petition. Here's a redacted copy because there's some proprietary information that Oscar used to be able to look at, but nobody else can look at. And you know, this thing goes on and on and on. So obviously that's not the most accessible way of figuring out what's going on. But fortunately, we've got a lot of volunteers and energy nerds in Madison who do actually like to get together and review this stuff and look at it and crunch numbers. And I'm one of those. So this, I'm not going to go through this slide, but I wanted to give you an example of how I calculated how much coal power we're dependent on. And so what I did was I used, you know, the dockets, and I looked at, oh, when they applied for, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade and put new pollution control on the Columbia coal plant. You know, I looked in that docket and I looked at how they justified the cost to the regulator. They justify the cost to the regulator by saying, here's how much we think coal is going to cost, here's how much it's going to operate, and you know, here's how much it's going to cost, and then here's what the alternatives cost. And so what I'm doing is then looking at the 2 coal plants that they have, and I'm saying, well, what did they tell the PSC that these are going to operate at? And they told them they were going to be base load coal plants, and they're going to operate at about 78 to 80% of the time for Columbia, And then for Elm Road, the brand new one was 85 to 90% of the time. And so if you run the numbers of what MG&E owns in those coal plants times what they're justifying the expense of building them and continuing to build on them, you get a vastly different number. And you get the number that those two coal plants, if they run at what MG&E said they were going to run at when they got permission to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, it's over 70% of our electricity. And so that's a really shocking number to me. And the problem with, the other problem, well, that's coal, so that's a major problem. The other problem is last year those plants didn't run that much. They've had a lot of problems. Not only have they been rebuilding that 1975 Columbia coal plant bolt by bolt, and they have to take it offline to do some of that building, but the brand new one has been a clunker and has had horrible reliability problems. And in my report, you can read about some of those reliability problems and stuff like that. But here's the sad part. We're still paying for those plants, even when they're having reliability problems. And then we have to pay for the purchase power that MG&E needs to meet their load with. So it's a double whammy. And so this is why I think it's really important that we have to find out and we have to ask tough questions of MG&E in these community conversations to help understand how are you going to be the utility of the future when you have tied up so much in coal. The other thing you find out is they put down just other on their other slide, but you can actually find out what they've told the regulators that other is. They said it's about 40% coal and 60% natural gas. So don't confuse yourself that the other is going to be wind power or something like that. What they tell the regulators other is still heavily fossil fuel dependent. So 70% coal, okay, that's a bummer, but for how long? And then in the report, I go through it, the assumptions used when they justified spending $1 billion to retrofit this coal plant are based on running it until 2038. And then that brand new one over by Oak Creek that you'd see on the lakefront, that one is built based on running it until 2050 at least. So those are pretty daunting numbers. Madison Gas Electric's, their current consumption pattern, their demand is flat. So they're not, growing because people are being more efficient. So even as Madison's economy is taking off, their consumption is roughly flat the last 4 years. So if it stays flat in the future, what that means is these stay 70% coal as far as we can see. And that's a real problem if you're going to try to be the utility of the future. So this is the fun part for me, kind of, but you can see I have kind of a perverse sense of humor. So they ask you, pretend you are the CEO, and I think what they mean here is, we've got a lot of responsibility to keep the lights on and all this stuff, but I own a small business and I think about this stuff a lot, and so, let's play this game. So the first thing to understand is that MG&E, like other investor-owned utility, they profit from building things. Poles, wires, and power plants, and they profit when they build those, and the PSC gives them that approval and guarantees that they get that approval, that profit back from their ratepayers. But if you're going to build stuff, what's the best thing to build? The thing that gets you the highest rate of return. And what gets you the highest rate of return? Building a big coal plant. So this, if any of you guys are on fixed income or will be at some point, if anyone has an investment, if you were given an investment of 12.7% over 30 years, guaranteed, that would be awesome. That would be an awesome business to be in. So the first thing I would do if I was CEO is I'd be like, I'm in an awesome business. I build stuff and I get to make a ton of money. So then the other thing I would do.
That for a second?
Yeah.
So the Public Service Commission establishes a guaranteed rate of return, or so the 12 comes out of there.
Yep.
But is it also proven cost-wise because coal is cheap?
Well, so that's why you get into these things.
Is the 12 points that you were really, forget about a regulated industry where somebody sets your rate of return.
Yeah.
What is the real cost of running a plant, leave out the future costs of us all dying from it.
Yeah.
Leave that piece out of the equation.
I've got it. We'll hold that a little bit. I mean, because we can go back, because it's an excellent question, and we have people who have reviewed the PSC docket. But basically, the short answer that I'll give you right now is the PSC evaluates a utilities proposal, and then also evaluates alternatives. And different people get to participate in those cases, and you get these wonderful bedtime stories like this, which is an environmental impact statement. This is just volume 1, and it's full of all this data. And they have people put in there, hey, there's other options. We could do more energy efficiency. We could do more solar. And it's up to the commissioners ultimately as a independent regulatory agency. 3 commissioners appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate to 6-year terms. And they make that ultimate decision that then allows them, once they make the decision to build the coal plant, you get that 12.7 for 30 years. But they do look at those numbers, and we'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later, because in some cases the commission has made good choices and has denied. In 2008, Alliant wanted to build a coal plant, and they said no way. It cost too much, and it was going to cost the ratepayers too much, and that, with hindsight, was a great decision. But MG&E's been a little more lucky, and with Columbia, where it's that old plant, rebuilding it piece by piece, it was a little bit sneaky the way that one happened. So I'm the CEO. I'm happy. I'm making over $1 million a year running this monopoly, and I still ask some questions.
Your total, I was reading from an article that says your total package is $2.7 million for next year.
Well,
1.2 million.
Drinks are on me. Anyway,
I'm not making this up. This is the same
yeah.
Stock options.
So, okay, true. But I'd also, even though I'm making a ton of money, whatever the number is, I still want to know, how is my leadership team doing at predictions and making decisions, particularly those long-term decisions with major implications for my business. And if I call myself a utility that has a good interaction with the community, and that might even be in the tagline for my utility, then I'd also know what are those implications for the community as well. So here's a slide. Now I'm going to get into a couple slides that just have some text in them. I'm going to go a little bit faster, but the reason why I wanted to do this is because I wanted it to be absolutely clear that I'm using MG&E's own words, and I'm going through what happened when they were signing up and building that brand new coal plant, that awesome one in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. So I don't see him here, but we did have a pro bono lawyer who gets this stuff really well. And when We Energies proposed that big coal plant, Elm Road, MG&E then negotiated to have a contract to be a co-owner, which they then became. And so MG&E started to participate in those proceedings at the Public Service Commission, the ones where I said, there's volumes and volumes. And this is interesting. So this man said, wait a second, MG&E's participating in these proceedings, where they should talk about their alternatives and what their demand is, because We Energies was doing it for We Energies. And this is their response. I'm going to try to say it like I'm a CEO. MG&E and WPPI, the other co-owner, hold options to acquire minority ownership shares in these facilities, the coal plants, because we have not yet exercised these options nor applied for authority to participate. It would be inappropriate for the Commission to consider their need for Elm Road facilities or their energy supply alternatives in this proceedings. So they're saying basically, we're going to cheer on this coal plant because once it gets approval, we're going to become co-owners, but we don't need to talk about our alternatives or our demand projections. So I saw that when I was, on page 1,000 of all these things, and I was like, whoa, that's weird. So I wanted to dig a little deeper, so it gets better. Hold on. So then, I thought, well, maybe they're not going to be participating in those proceedings very much. Oh no, they participated a lot. And this is a screenshot of their brief, and this is a legal document where they summarize, after looking at all the data, they summarize, here is our position on this coal plant. And they submitted to the Public Service Commission, and that was in 2003, right before the commissioners got together and had this stack of paper and got to make this decision that was going to impact us for a long time. So I got some quotes in here, and I want to go through them with you. There's not too many of them, and let's just see how their predictions worked out and if there was any self-serving things going on. So, Wisconsin generally, and MGE specifically, need new baseload generating capacity. We just need it. So then, they built it, they got it, and then you say, right now, the Elm Road coal plant is located in an area of the grid projected to have excess capacity through at least 2022. Even as the economy has rebounded in Madison, like I mentioned earlier, their sales are flat the last 4 years. It can be hard to kind of see exactly what it is because it'll be weather adjusted, but they're essentially flat. And then that's just a reference just to show you I didn't pull it out of my ear or whatever. Okay, so wait. So, all right, maybe they got one prediction wrong. All right, it's easy for me to play, what is that, backseat quarterback or one. It's easy for me to say, gotcha, 20/20 hindsight. So let's see what their other predictions did. So let me try that CEO voice. Additional baseload capacity is needed not only to serve increasing demand for electric power, but also to offset inevitable retirements of aging existing units. And then, so they sought to justify an expensive new coal plant in 2003 because they'd be retiring old coal plants. But then a few years later, MGE, the other owners of Columbia, which was built in 1975, began planning an expensive retrofit of that coal plant, and now it's going to run until 2038. So they asked for this new coal plant because we might be retiring old ones. They got the new coal plant, and they got to keep the old one too, and invest a lot of money in it, but they also get that 12+% rate of return. So this is getting really good. This is great. And then, what are the other options? Moreover, Wisconsin's transmission system is severely constrained, which limits Wisconsin's utilities' ability to reliably import baseload capacity from sources outside the state. Boy, it sounds like they're really playing the card of we got to keep your lights on, right? We got to build this plant to keep your lights on, right? So then, this is just awesome for me as a CEO, because in 2005, just 2 years after making that statement, MGE becomes a co-owner of ATC, the ones that keep your lights on, which earns them a 12.2% rate of return. Not as good as a coal plant, but pretty good. Conveniently, in that same year, ATC proposed a huge new transmission line in the Madison area that you guys now see along the Belt Line, called Rockdale to West Middleton, and it was it took a few years, and then it was approved in 2009 at a cost of $152 million. That ties up with Rockdale to Paddock Lake in Illinois, and now we got lots of capacity to go back and forth to Illinois. So we justified the coal plant because we couldn't get power from Illinois. Then we build the coal plant, and then we build the transmission lines anyway. So this is just an excellent business to be in. The Wall Street Journal, I think it was the same person who wrote that article that Mitch put up there, said, utilities recipes for profit, build more things. They published that in April. So this one's interesting, this one isn't quite as good. More specifically, MGE has a need for new baseload capacity, and then, I don't even know how this passed their reviewers. Because it is not an issue here, we're not presenting our specific need case in this docket. And this one, I call, we need power, but we don't want to talk specifically about how much power or the alternatives. So they actually, that was in that document that I showed you. And I'm almost done, but it's so good. It's so good. This one is just, this is awesome. They're kind of taking this step back, and they're trying to educate the commissioners and saying, the need to maintain fuel diversity also supports the approval of the Elm Road coal units. And I just love this. It sounds like they're professorial. prudent planning requires that electric utilities maintain fuel diversity in their generation portfolio. When too large a percentage of a utility's resources utilize a single fuel source, changes in fuel price or availability are more likely to result in dramatic price fluctuations or decreased reliability for utility customers. So they actually put that in there. And it sounds like you could almost imagine they're kind of like lecturing, you know, us who don't know what's going on, and they're just like, you know, wearing the professorial eyeglasses. So this is great though. So now they are dependent on a single fuel source, coal, for 70% plus of their resource. But even gets better than that, because the co-owners of Elm Road, that new coal plant, that was built to burn Eastern high BTU coal. From, if anyone out here is a geologist, it's a Pennsylvania number 6. You remember that? And
That's so-called hard coal.
yeah, no, it was pretty good stuff. I'm wearing, my pants that I'm wearing, this is called sub-bituminous brown pants. And so they're converting it to Western low BTU, which is a sub-bituminous coal from the Powder River Basin of Wyoming, which incidentally is the same coal that goes to Columbia. So at one point, it was all coal, it was 70% coal, but at least you could say, hey, one was getting Eastern coal, one was getting Western coal. But now, they screwed up, and the Eastern coal, you know, it's way too expensive, and it's less reliable to get it here. So they screwed up when they built this big power plant. But here's the kicker. When you're a utility and you screw up, so now they have to convert the Elm Road coal plant, that brand new big one. They get to convert it, spend tens of millions of dollars, and they get a rate of return on that construction. So like, what other business do you screw up, and then you get to make money fixing your screw up?
The university.
It's fantastic. It is fantastic.
Remember that 12% comes from ratepayers.
Yeah.
It's not ratepayer. Well, the cost of the screw up plus the 12%.
Yeah, well, right, and the replacement power, since that one's been so unreliable. Just like, we could talk about the numbers forever. Elm Road, you know, is supposed to be upwards of 85 to 90% capacity factors. In the Coal Truth docket, I have a quote, you know, in 2013 it was 25%. It operated only a quarter of the time. And the all-in cost for that power from it, which was supposed to be 3 to 4 or 5 cents a kilowatt hour, was 14 cents. And then,
Just amazing.
yeah. So the other problem, and I joke around a little because it's, you know, I guess otherwise we'd be crying right now, but this is serious. I mean, when you switch to that dirtier coal, your CO2 emissions go up, because sub-bituminous coal has a lot more moisture in it, and it has a lower BTU value, so you have to burn more of it, and it doesn't burn as efficiently, particularly in a power plant that was designed from the ground up to burn Pittsburgh number 6. So that's about 9%. So that's a pretty, that's a bummer. So there's some poor planning involved. I'm going to put off my CEO hat and now just, you know, honestly, their poor planning has resulted in two problems, both the highest rates of any Wisconsin utility and the highest long-term coal dependency. And to calculate that highest long-term coal dependency, I could run it in with someone, but it's pretty easy. You look at the load for each of the companies, and then how many power plants they have. And what you find is that most of the other power plants, even though they're bigger and they have big shares of big coal plants, as a percentage of their total load, none of them have this much tied up in coal plants that are either brand new or have had $1 billion in reconstruction. So they last till 2038. So that's a really scary number, and it's just baffling. You know, you would say, well, coal's a cheap fuel, so you know, at least it's cheap. And no, we got way higher rates. One of the participants in our things compared our rates. If you were the same person living in Eau Claire and you were a smaller or moderate user, your rates would be dramatically cheaper than as an MG&E customer. And you can look at whether it's a muni or a co-op or another investor-owned utility. MG&E has the highest rates in the state. So you'd say, okay, they messed up. The CEO that I was just pretending, they messed up. They're still all employed and they get bonuses, but we messed up. But you'd say, okay, maybe we need to work in other avenues to kind of get clean energy. Maybe we need to lobby, and I know many of you here care a lot about the issues, so you try to do your part and contact your legislators and say, I want clean energy. Well, unfortunately, MG&E gets in the way of that as well. So behind the scenes, MG&E is fighting clean energy. And let me share with you this email, and this is an email sent in 2010. From someone I used to work with. I used to work at Clean Wisconsin. Ryan Scriver was the lobbyist for Clean Wisconsin. Many of you might have seen him. Him and I worked really closely on fighting Alliance Coal Power Plant. He would go into the Capitol and talk with legislators from the Madison area and try to talk to them about the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which came out of the Governor's Task Force on Global Warming, and just clean energy in general. And the legislators would tell him, oh, MG&E was just in here and they said that'll never work. MG&E was just in here and they said, no way, we don't support that. And so you're like, really? And this is all still available. I don't know if any of you guys remember Sustain Dane on their listserv, but there's the URL. You can go and you can read his email. And this is the quote that Ryan put down. MG&E successfully worked to undermine clean energy legislation in the state capitol and now wants to stick energy users with the bill to duct tape together their aging coal plant in Columbia County. And it's just sad, So not only they get it wrong with their business model and saddle us with all these coal costs, but then they haven't been helpful. What Neil's mentioned, they fought the city of Madison. They wouldn't sign up for the solar, the sunshot. And then they pressure other people. And I've heard this from people at the university where MG&E will pressure people at the university not to be part of these initiatives that are trying to make it easier for you guys to get solar and things like that. So it's a really unfortunate thing. And if there's one good thing that comes out of the community energy conversations, at least, it's going to be hard to get them away from these 2 coal plants, but at least if they could start representing what their customers want at the legislature instead of fighting them. So I think I just have 1 or 2 more slides. Why does this matter? Well, obviously it matters because how are you going to become the utility of the future if you're burning the fuel of the past? So that's basically it. That's the story. It's not a happy story, but I tried to include some really nice graphics in the report so it wasn't too depressing. And I think that was all. And so I think we're going to have like this facilitated discussion, and hopefully we don't get too in the weeds on any one topic, but it should be fun.
Thank you, Peter.